We're live with Stephen Sokoler, founder and CEO of Journey. It's awesome to have you here, Stephen.
Thank you for having me. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Shabbat Shalom. For those out there that don't know what Journey is, can you tell us a little bit about all the awesome stuff that you guys are doing in the meditation world?
Sure. Well, first off, I'm happy to say we've expanded from meditation into mental health more broadly. So we have a variety of tools for kind of anyone that comes along. Basically, I started the company 6 years ago, 2015, probably feels like 30 years ago, but the mission was to help all people live happier, healthier, less stressed lives. Really, how do we democratize mental health? And we started, as you said, with meditation. And over the years have added a whole bunch of other practices and modalities to people where they are. You know, there's a lot of people that love meditation. It transformed my life. And then there's other folks that say, hey, it's not for me, or, you know, there's a stigma that comes with it. And so we now offer cognitive behavioral therapy, psychology, breathwork practices, journaling, a whole host of tools. And basically what we do is we work with employers. So everything we do is on the prevention side. So we're building a preventative mental health company, and our product, Journey Live, basically empowers employees with the tools, resources, and support being super important, that they need to navigate both work and life, right? How do we treat the whole person and give them just a ton of tools and the support to go through this crazy thing called life?
This crazy thing called life. It's pretty crazy, especially in 2021.
Seriously.
So how did it all start? You mentioned meditation impacted your life. What's the story that led you here in terms of the founding story of Journey?
Sure.
Or the journey behind Journey.
The journey of Journey. Yeah, that happens a lot. So the short version of the story is I moved to Sydney in 2011 to open an office for my former company. So I was running a company that helped organizations celebrate and inspire their employees. We were designing awards and recognition programs. And I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I grew up in Queens. I moved to the city when I was 18 to go to college. And now at this point, I guess I was 2011, I guess I was 32, moved out of the city for the first time and moved to Sydney. And in Sydney, I had just much more space in every way you could imagine, you know, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I found a book on Buddhism, and it really spoke to me. And I started meditating, and it was really transformational for me. Came back to New York a few years later, sold that company. And then when I looked at what I wanted to do next, I had done that one business for 12 years. And, you know, yeah, long time. And so I knew, you know, kind of know thyself, I think is really important. And for me, I knew that whatever I did, I would do it for a long time. So I said, I want to do something that matters, right? Like I'm only going to be in this lifetime once, at least in this body, right? So I may as well do something that actually makes a difference. And when I looked at the time meditation, it's now true about kind of mental health more broadly, but I thought it was pretty misunderstood as religious, difficult, spiritual, confusing. And I thought that if we could bring it to people in a really simple, approachable, secular way, it could really resonate. And so that was when we got started back in 2015.
What was that book that you came across in terms of Buddhism?
So I really, I'd love to tell you it was this profound Buddhist text that I, you know, discovered in like a monastery or something, but it was called Buddhism for Busy People. Probably the most alpha name. Great book. Basically the story of a guy, I think he's married, like a family guy who lived in the UK. I think he was working in an ad agency at the time. And he found Buddhism, and it just really changed his perspective on the world. And for me, I grew up Jewish, you know, as we've talked about before, and that's important to me culturally, but I never took away like lessons. And I know they're in there, just it wasn't what I learned growing up, but like how to navigate life more skillfully, right? How to go through life with a certain amount of grace and elegance and compassion. And Buddhism really spoke to me. So it was very powerful for me.
Really cool. So you come back from that trip and you have this idea, I want to do meditation for employers. How did you get started? Who were your first calls? Who were your first clients? How did it all come together?
Yeah, well, I came back from the trip and I had no plans on doing anything other than the business I was running at the time. So I did that for another 2.5 years. So I sold the company in 2014. And then when I said, what am I going to do next? That was when I looked and said, okay, what things are true for me? One is I want to build a big business. That's important to me. It's interesting, it's intellectual, it's fun, and I want to do something that matters, right? So kind of like the head and the heart. And I thought there was this opportunity here to both help people and build a big business. And so put together experts on the mental health side, the workplace wellness side, because while I had experience building businesses, my experience was not in meditation, in workplace wellness, in mental health. And so I was able to really just build relationships with some of the experts and real luminaries in the space. Sharon Salzberg, Tal Ben Shahar, Doug Brewer, a guy named Dr. James Doty, who runs the Compassion Lab at Stanford. Like really incredible people. Told them what I was working on, and they said they'd be willing to help. And my partner in the business was a man named David Nickturn, who's just an incredible teacher and human being. And they all both helped with the curriculum, but also gave us a lot of credibility, right? The fact of the matter was, like, while I had credibility and know-how on the business side, I was not the world expert on any of the mental health components of it. So was fortunate there. And then once we had something, well, actually probably to say it more correctly, as we were building something, I am friendly with one of the two co-CEOs of Warby Parker, and he was over here at my apartment for a little get-together back when people were able to hang out in real life, although it seems like we're getting closer to those days again. And I said to him, hey, can you connect me to your people person? I'd love to understand how they think about this. He did. We launched the company in March. This was in March. And his people person said, oh my God, this is amazing timing. April is self-development month. Can we run a program with you? So what is, a person say, yeah, of course, right? And so we were definitely building the ship, while we were flying it, building the plane while we were flying it, which I guess 6 years later, we still sort of are. But Warby Parker was our first client. I then went to a friend of mine who worked at Time Warner, and she was able to get us in through Viva, which was, I believe, like the Latin American women's employee group, ERG. And so we went there. And then from there, over the years, we've worked with bigger and better, not better, but more companies of all shapes and sizes.
And at the beginning, you guys were doing mostly in person. You hired a bunch of meditation teachers, and you would sign the companies, and then a couple times a week or once every 2 weeks, y'all would go in and spend maybe like a morning or a lunch with the team and teach them meditation.
Exactly. So when we started, the two biggest differences between then and now, when we started, we were focused solely on meditation, and everything was on site. Fortunately for us, so along the way, we started to expand outside of New York and LA, London, Shanghai. So we have teachers all over the world, all of whom are experienced, trained teachers in whatever modality. Again, started with meditation, but have since evolved to other things. And then we train them on the journey, practice, approach, and philosophy around simplicity, around how, so that there's a consistent experience for our users, for the employees, and for the companies. So we started with meditation and have subsequently added other practices, other teachers, things like that. But also we started having clients request classes in cities where we didn't have teachers. And so a client might say, okay, do you have people in London? The answer is yes. Do we have people in, somewhere else? We might say no, in which case we started doing things virtually. So we were very fortunate because when the pandemic hit, a year and change ago, we already had a lot of experience doing virtual things. In addition to that, 2 years prior, so in 2018, we raised our first venture round, and that allowed us to build out a whole host of digital tools. So we were well situated to sort of shift from on-site to virtual because we already were doing a lot of that.
And then, I guess as an entrepreneur, as you're looking at the market, it sounds like you were doing corporate meditation before it was cool, before Calm and Headspace made it like a big leg of their business. I guess like as you were looking at the business, then started to get into digital tools as well, how did you look at the competitive landscape and like what was missing in other tools or meditation approaches that you were trying to solve, or a gap that you saw, where you could make health and wellness or mental health more accessible?
Sure. Well, a couple things. So back in 2015, Calm and Headspace were both around, but were not nearly the behemoths they are now, right? And one of the things I'm kind of most proud of is how much society has shifted, and hopefully we played, some very tiny part in it around mental health, right? Like you hear people speaking about it much more openly. You see companies bringing in companies like Journey or Calm or Headspace, and it's become much more acceptable, at least in the United States, right? Globally, there's still a lot of work to be done. And there's still a lot of work to be done here. But where we saw an opportunity was, how do you meet people where they are with these types of practices in a way that doesn't scare them away? So like my mom, who's a school teacher in Queens, or my brother who runs a hedge fund, like they might not resonate with Buddhism. They might not pick up that book. But if you come to them through a trusted source, through their employer or through a community that they're a part of, and instead of talking about some particular philosophical thing, if you're talking about, this is going to help you in the way you interact with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your kids, your partner at work, your colleagues, then yourself, right? Then it becomes much more real and much more tangible. And so the practices, whether it's meditation or cognitive behavioral therapy or journaling or any of those, like those practices work. Every clinical study has shown it. So there's nothing that we're really doing new there. But what we are doing that's different is packaging it in a way that's much more approachable, much more digestible for people. And the second thing I'll say is all of the products that were out on the market at the time were single player. You were doing them by yourself, Calm, Headspace, et cetera. And what we thought was there was a real opportunity to leverage the group. So basically, meditation in particular has been taught for thousands of years in groups, in communities. And for the last 5-10 years, it's something people do on their phones by themselves. And that's why most people fall off, right? Most people try it once and then they don't come back. And we thought, why not leverage the power of the group? And if you think about it, every study around weight loss, exercise, smoking cessation shows how impactful it is to have a friend there to encourage you, to support you, to nudge you, to help you when you fall off. And so that was when we raised that venture round in 2018 to build the world's first live group meditation app. We've leveraged all of that we've built to the current product, right? And again, brought in those other practices. But the power of the group is really one of the things that I think was and still remains missing.
Yeah, I think in some ways there's so many tools now, and that's awesome because you, as a consumer, you have so many different options in terms of the vibe that you want or the approach that you want in terms of a meditation experience. But I think having that time where your coworkers are blocking it off their calendar to go take a class with Journey is pretty powerful, and is probably the way that you can create some level of consistency and a habit out of the practice.
Yeah, and to tell you where we are now, right? 6 years of learning, we've learned a lot. I actually listened to a podcast yesterday with the CEO of Noom, and they've been at it for 14 years, right? And they've learned a lot, right? So in 6 years, we've learned a lot about how do you get people to show up, and not just show up once, but show up consistently. And so the way the program is built now for companies is there's multiple access points. So for one, we have these weekly classes that are 30 minutes, they're bite-sized. They're, of course, virtual now, but at some point in the future, they'll be on-site again. But those are optional, and it gives employees permission to go and step away from their desk or their work to take care of themselves, right? It's saying, we care enough about you and self-care to put this on the calendar consistently. So that's one part. Second part is Journey Live, the digital platform that has live classes, recorded classes, a whole host of content. And that's, again, to treat the whole human. So it's things like sleep and stress and anxiety, of course, but there's also things like empathy and unconscious bias, gratitude in a pandemic, staying productive in uncertain times, and all led by real teachers, right? So it's not you're just listening to a recording. There's a real human being there that you can interact with when you take the live classes. That could say, John, 3 days in a row, keep up the great work. Oh, Rebecca, first class, welcome. So nice to have you here, right? And you can also get the support from the peers in the class, the other students. And then the third sort of leg of the stool is we have this thing called the Daily Journey newsletter, which is an email newsletter delivered to employees' inboxes every morning. Bite-sized tip, bite-sized video. They can share it with friends or family. They can, of course, opt out if they want or change it from daily to weekly or monthly. But the idea is, how do we encourage or inspire or nudge you to do something on a consistent basis to keep yourself mentally and emotionally fit? Like, we're very good societally about brushing our teeth, right? We know that. Now, that's not a thing that we did 10,000 years ago. That's something that we learned, and there's marketing behind it. And, it shows people with big, bright, white, smiley teeth, shiny teeth, right? Or steps. We now know that we're supposed to take a certain amount of steps a day. Whether we do it or not, different story, but at least we know it, right? What's the mental health equivalent? Like, what are the things that we're supposed to be doing on a consistent basis to keep ourselves mentally and emotionally fit? And that's where Journey fits in, is to say, hey, we have this consumer grade product that looks like Netflix or looks like Spotify. We're going to encourage and inspire you to use it on a consistent basis.
I love that. So what are those types of things? Is it gratitude? Is it, can you give us a little bit of insight into what those things are that we could do on a day-to-day basis, those micro habits that make us more mindful and happy?
We have 3 different areas that we focus on. So there's self-care, interpersonal skills, and effectiveness. And, self-care is really the foundational thing. So you need to take care of yourself, whether that's getting a good night's sleep, right? Simple, right? Nothing groundbreaking there. But like, we're in this, hustle society, even now, post-pandemic or in the middle of the pandemic, depending on how you view it. And it's still one of these things where we're celebrated for working till 2 a.m. and doing stuff like that, right? But like, getting a good night's sleep is super powerful for the body and the mind, right? Totally. Eating healthy, eating clean, right? Very, very important. Moving the body, having some kind of movement. Doesn't mean you have to go to the gym and do CrossFit for 4 hours. It just means you have to move the body, right? Then we have a whole bunch of practices to look inward. So understanding, yourself. So that could be journaling. It could be a simple breath work practice. It could be a mindfulness practice. And it could be something like a formal 3-minute follow the breath. Or it could be something a little bit lighter and more playful, where it's incorporating gratitude or visualization. So really, it's less similar to physical fitness, right? Like, what's the exercise to do? Well, it depends on the person, right? Depends on what you're trying to do. So it could be yoga, it could be running, it could be lifting, it could be stretching, right? A whole host of things. And so same thing here. And so we really try to meet people where they are. So one of the newest things that we launched on the platform is monthly assessments, daily check-ins, and personal recommendations. And those 3 go hand in hand. So we survey the employees when they first start, and then every month thereafter. And we worked with the former chief behavioral scientist at Humana, who's really amazing. We had worked with her on a clinical study when she was at Humana, and she's now runs a consulting practice. We worked with her to take these clinically validated questions and be able to put them into a way that felt good, like you'd want to fill it out, versus, this sort of heavy, sad, draining questionnaire. So we did that. And that allows us to, number 1, provide recommendations back to the actual person who's filling it out. Number 2, it allows us to track progress over time and report that anonymously and in aggregate to the employer, so they can keep their finger on the pulse of the company and how people are feeling. And there's daily check-ins. So in between those monthly assessments, you could just check in how you're feeling, what's going on, and allows you as the user to see over time how you're feeling. Oh, wow, this month I'm feeling much better than last month. What's happening, right? Providing more data and insights into your own sort of human experience. So we've continued to try to think of ways to encourage you to do something to take care of your mental and emotional health.
Yeah, it's awesome. Why not? Like, if you can continue that practice on a day-to-day basis and have it subsidized by your employer, that's what we're all about. And I think having more tools to hit a lot of parts of your mind that are not maybe open, like that are not physically visible, but that need to be nourished in some capacity in order to keep you stimulated and aware and mindful, is all awesome. And then also tying it back to back to performance and productivity, via the employer is great as well. I'm curious, Stephen, to dive a little bit deeper into like your own mental models and how you've evolved and changed over time. I could see the meditation is working. You're very dynamic. What have you, like, who are you at your core, and what has maybe been more inherent to you in terms of like the entrepreneurial journey? And then what have you had to develop or hone in over the last 6 years, or maybe more, because this is your second rodeo, in terms of things that maybe are not as natural, but you're continuing to practice and refine?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of great questions in there. I think meditation for me, there's lots of different analogies that people use to talk about it, whether it's like peeling the layers of an onion or polishing a gem or a stone. Like, I think we go through life. I don't think I've ever spoken about it this way, so we'll see how it goes. But we go through life and we pick up things along the way, some good, some bad, and some of the things can get a little, like, if we're, this beautiful diamond, maybe it gets covered in a little dust or a little muck or this or that, and meditation and therapy and sound ceremonies and psychedelics and those are not Journey products. Many of these, not yet. Many of these practices have really helped me to like clean off some of that stuff that I had picked up along the way that wasn't so helpful. My favorite definition of meditation is the Tibetan word gom, G-O-M, to become familiar with, and the idea of like becoming more familiar with myself and my habits and my patterns. And, I think maybe it was 8 years ago now that I started realizing that a lot of the things, maybe 6 years ago, it was close to when I started Journey, like when I went much deeper with my practice, that I started realizing that a lot of the activities I was doing were not aligned with who I was and who I wanted to be. Like I was going through the motions of a lot of things, whether it was at work or socially, that just weren't who I am, right? And so having the time and space to be able to kind of see more clearly has been super helpful for me. That said, I went on a retreat, I guess it was 4 years ago now, 3 years ago, with Jack Kornfield. And Jack Kornfield is an amazing Buddhist teacher and was pretty much the reason I'm doing my work. Like, I was very inspired by him as a teacher many years ago. So I went on this retreat. It was like 100 of us. And like, I was totally like fanboy, like he was there. And I was like, oh my God, like as if he was, Jay-Z or somebody. And I was talking to him and it was incredible. But I remember right at the start, it was this silent retreat. And I thought I was there to work on a few things. And within 15 minutes of being in silence, all of these other things came up around self-confidence and control and ego. And it was like, okay, this is what's here, right? Like once the mind quiets down, once some of the stimulation goes away. As it pertains to work and what I'm working on now, like I've been challenged recently with my patterns and habits around control. Like I have a very nice life. Like I have my fiance who I'm totally obsessed with and have like a super healthy relationship with and feel great about. And part of this is pandemic related. Like my life is fairly contained. Like I wake up, I have my practice, I do my thing, I work, I get to do work that I really love. And being the CEO of the company, I'm in charge of a lot of things. But that can cut both ways because I end up extending too much into some of my team members, the things that they're working on. Or with my partner, it could be, oh, maybe we should do it this way. And like, it's something where I'm personally working on how do I relearn some of these things and be a little bit more open about whatever shall be and not holding on so tight to a particular type of experience that I'm searching for. I hope some of this is making sense.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, it sounds like developing for you, like even just that self-awareness through meditation is giving you a little bit more insight into, yeah, that I can completely resonate with that in terms of control. Whereas I think even for me, sometimes the meditation practice is like, whatever, life is going to continue going and evolving, and you don't necessarily need to always be in the driver's seat trying to drive. Like, that balance is really key. And then I guess in terms of like what has been more inherent into like your own entrepreneurial journey, like this is your second time doing this. What is it about you that has put you on this path again?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's certainly stressful, but when I was trying to decide what to do next, this is back in 2014, I was thinking about all the different options. Do I go and join an early stage company? Do I join a late stage company? And on and on. And I thought, hey, you know what? Like, I'm at a place in my life. At the time I was single, not in a relationship, no kids. Like, let's go for it. Let's see if we can build that. That last company had 80 employees. I was super proud of what we were able to accomplish. Let's see if I can build something that has an even bigger impact, right? Like, that's the fun intellectual part of it. And the hard part of like, hey, the world really needs this now. And like, crazy to think like the world needs it even more now than it did before, whether it's divisive politics or the global pandemic or climate change or on and on and on and on, right? Like, but it felt important. And so I'd say a combination of the like challenge and the thrill of can I build something else, and the like calling of like, this is what's needed right now.
And then how about your first company? Did that, like, what was the thought process behind that? And maybe even going a little bit before that, just to understand who you are. In college, did you think I want to be a business owner or an entrepreneur? I want to start my own thing. Like, what did you think you were going to be doing after college, and how did you decide to get into your first business?
Yeah, I definitely thought I'm going to be running a business. Like, I'm going to be this business guy. I had tried out for The Apprentice back when before Donald Trump.
No way.
Dude, it's so funny. I remember what I was wearing and everything, and standing on the street. This is like before Donald Trump was who he is now, right? Like, it was just like this big, obnoxious businessman, not, divisive politician, right? Like, so it's a totally different world, right? But I wanted to be a business guy, like that was my thing. That was like the 18, 20-year-old version of me. And I was entrepreneurial. I had started a bunch of businesses when I was in high school and college. Like, I was always hustling. Grew up middle class and thought there was like opportunities to make a buck and build something. I studied finance. So I had like I went to Stern, the business school at NYU undergrad. So I had like some good foundational education. But I ended up joining this company called the Award Group, which was helping companies celebrate and inspire their employees. I joined to run their nonprofit division. So this division helped nonprofits and associations to raise more money by recognizing and celebrating their members and their donors. So I was totally drawn to the mission. Very quickly, I ended up seeing this other business opportunity to work with investment banks. And because I had studied finance, all of my friends were working in investment banks. And so it just took off really quickly. And then a few years later, I ended up purchasing that division in a management buyout from the owners, my bosses at the time. And then during the financial crisis, acquired a bunch of other businesses. And then when the market came back, opened offices in London, Sydney, Hong Kong, Montreal, and Taiwan. I moved to Sydney, which is the story that I told you before, right? How I ended up here. But back then, when I first started, like, it was a combination of this mission speaks to me, right? Of helping nonprofits, like that spoke to me, and there's a business opportunity. So it was similar, but I would say the weighting of it was probably like 95%. I'm probably overstating that. Probably like 80% business opportunity, 20% this matters. Whereas when I started Journey, I'd say it was probably 50-50.
How has the journey, like the journey, like the meditation and the work you've been doing on yourself, impacted how you are as a leader, founder, CEO compared to your first company?
Oh, dude, it's like night and day. I mean, I lost 85 pounds. This has nothing to do with meditation or mental health, although it certainly, it does in some ways, but it's not part of this story. This predates that. So in 2002, I lost all this weight, right?
Wow.
Going from being essentially obese, but let's just call it fat, from being fat to now being slim, right? Losing 85 pounds was less of a change in my life than before I meditated to now
Wow.
meditation. And now subsequently adding therapy and coaching and men's groups and all of these other things that I do to really help keep myself mentally and emotionally, balanced and fit and healthy. So at the time I was like 27 or 28, and I was a New Yorker, and I was making decisions quickly and wanted to, be in action all the time. And some of that is still here, but I would say I was much more reactive back then than I was responsive. I don't think I handled myself nearly as skillfully. I don't think I was as clear with what my real values were back then versus now. Part of that's also age, right? Like being 27 and being in New York is different than being 42 and being engaged and having, been around the block a few times. But I would say the ability to see myself clearly now versus before is the biggest game changer. And it changes everything in the way I relate to people, the conversations we have, the depth. Like I'll meet up with people and we just talk about things that are much different. Like we're not talking about the surface stuff. I mean, we can talk about that. There's nothing wrong with that, but we can also go way deep really quick and really open up in a way that when you're thinking about the workplace, which is where the question was, right? Like, how do you create a psychologically safe environment where people can show up as themselves, right? Like, how do we do that? And part of that comes with these authentic connections. And so I feel really lucky. Like one of the nice things about running a company like Journey is it attracts a certain type of person, right? Not everyone wants to work at a mental health startup, but the people that do tend to be open-hearted. They want to work really hard because it's a startup and they know that's what it is, right? They're not there for the money. They're there for, let me build something. Let me help the world. Let me do this. And so, those tend to be people that want to go a little deeper in terms of the conversation, want to be able to build this community and environment where people can do their best work by being their most authentic selves.
How, as a leader, do you ensure that people are not overdoing it on the hustle side, and that they are prioritizing their own well-being in order to then be able to fill up their cups and give to your customers and clients and product?
Yeah, I'll be honest. We have not done a good job with that recently. I shouldn't say we. I should say me. Like we basically went through a ton of change over the last 6 months. Yeah, 6 months. I think we doubled or tripled the amount of people that we have at the company, and it's all virtual. And we have very ambitious plans, and it just stretched people too thin. And some people burnt out. Some people left as a result. It was a very, very good learning lesson for us. Unfortunate, right? Of course, both for the team, and because everyone's touched by it, right? As a small team, if one person's struggling, like you feel it, right? So I can tell you lots of different things that one should do, about how to prevent that stuff. But the truth is, recently we have not been as good at it as we could be.
Yeah, it's tough because we're like all of us. We're just like so now with our cell phones, we could just work anytime, anywhere. So sometimes creating those boundaries is hard. I've experimented with a few digital Shabbats of just like turning off my phone Friday night and not turning it on until Saturday night. And it's so nice to just not have something else distracting you and robbing your attention for a little bit. And just, I think there's still so much work to be done there. And then as leaders, what you could do in terms of creating that environment where other people feel empowered to do that themselves.
I just want to stay on this for a second.
No, please.
I think one great thing about Journey, and this goes back to the people thing, the people really care. like they care about the world, they care about the job, but they care about each other, right? Like, so that part's awesome. So there's a lot of like love and support there. But we as a company need to do a better job of how do we create an environment where people feel really cared for? So we have things in place. Like we have this thing called wisdom money, where everyone gets $1,000 a year to go and do something personal, some kind of personal development. It could be therapy, it could be coaching, it could be a retreat. Just go and do something that nourishes you, right? So people have used it for all types of things. One person went back to their ancestral homeland. Somebody else used it for a retreat in Israel. Like really cool stuff, and amazing stories have come out of it. So we have things like that. We just launched, and this is one of these things where it's like, you just launched? Like, shouldn't you have had this? We just launched the Journey program for the Journey team. So over the years, we've had different parts of it. We've done this, that, but we've never really been like, Journey is going to be an actual client, right? And it will be treated as such. Right? We'll monitor engagement, we'll do all the things. And so we recently rolled that out. So there's been a whole bunch of things that we've put in place to say, how do we really help and support people and prevent burnout the same way our clients are struggling with, right? We need to like eat our own dog food.
Yeah. Just because we're like diving deep into it, and this is part of like when I have the most fun in these conversations. You mentioned control, and just like letting that go is like one thing you're working on. Anything else you're open to sharing in terms of like, you're doing this work, you're doing this meditation, therapy, coaching, etc., that has sort of come out of that you are actively working on through a specific practice? And like, is there a specific tool that you can share with us in terms of something else beyond that?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know if it'll be helpful or interesting, but one of the things I'm working on, I was working with my therapist on issues of self-worth. And it's this sort of, I forget the actual name. I think it's called like family system therapy, or it's basically that we all have different parts and those parts serve different reasons, but sometimes they can be really like have a larger seat at the table than they should, right? And it's not about pushing it down, but about recognizing it, giving it space, et cetera. And so there's parts of me that are insecure around a variety of different things, fairly normal stuff, but like something that I say I want to work on, right? I don't want to have this limitation. And so the practice that we've been doing is basically going back to figure out how old that part is, right? It's like insecure parts. We've said, okay, he's maybe 5 or 6 years old. It's nothing scientific to it. It's very like, just free flow. Okay. What can we do to let that 5 or 6 year old version of me know that he's loved, that he's safe, that he's taken care of, right? And so the meditation has been having this 42-year-old version of me hang out with that 5, 6, 7-year-old version. And what's actually been fun, I'd say I do this practice probably 3 times a week in between my other practices, is also extending that 5, 6, 7-year-old version to a 12-year-old version, a 15-year-old version, an 18-year-old version, right? And having the wisdom now to look back on, I don't know what you were like as a high school kid, but like I was
crazy.
Yeah, like this is ridiculous, right? And so it's like being able to impart some of that wisdom, and most of all, to be like, you're good. Like you're just good. Like you don't have to do anything. Like you're just good as a human being, right? You don't have to try. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. You don't have to try to look cool. Like you just be yourself. Be caring, be loving, be goofy, be fun, like be nerdy, like be all those things, and it's totally fine, and people will love you for that. And so that practice has been really helpful for me and interesting, like to just see the things that come up.
Yeah, I think that I wrote about it a little bit ago, and I think it's really interesting in terms of just like self-love versus self-improvement, and kind of striking the right balance between the two, because in so many ways, there's like the whole self-improvement world is like, it's a business of itself, like tracking your sleep, tracking your blood glucose, tracking your meditation time. And in some ways that can get extreme and put you at an imbalance or out of whack as well. And in terms of like some of the stuff that you're even mentioning, it's like a practice of self-improvement, but really it's also a practice of self-love. So that's an interesting sort of like balancing act in terms of straddling the two.
Yeah, I think for me, like the piece of advice I like the best is know thyself, Like what might be right for you at this point in your life might not be right for you in 5 years, and might not be right for me now, right? Or in 10 years. And so like when I was trying to lose weight, I was weighing myself all the time, 3 times a week, sometimes more, right? And I was losing weight and that was important. And I continued to do that for years, like up until probably 3 years ago. And the truth is, it stopped serving me so long ago. And if anything, it started actually harming me. And I did this Vipassana retreat, this 10-day silent meditation retreat. And the three things, I may not recall it exactly correct, but I think the three things, that I wanted to do, that I was telling myself were my goals, were to build a big sustainable business, to find a partner to spend my life with, and to be in great shape, right? And so the first one still very much resonates with me. The second one, like I've done that, so that feels good. But the third one, while I was at this retreat sitting in silence for so long, I realized it wasn't serving me because it was coming from a place of weakness and of insecurity. And so I basically said, you know what, that's actually not something that's important to me. What is important is being a good human. And the beautiful thing that happened was I was like, holy shit, I'm already a good human. Like I don't have to do anything. I can just be, right? Like I can be generous with my time, with friends and others. I can care, I can give back. Like, and I was like, oh my God, like I don't have to do another thing. You know what I mean? And so like, I remember interviewing somebody and I was sitting, it was three of us. And the candidate said, oh, I've meditated like, I don't know, 300 days in a row or something. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like that's awesome. Great. And then the other person who was there said to me, oh, how many days in a row have you meditated? And I was like, I have no idea. Like I meditate pretty much every day. Sometimes I miss a day. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do twice a day if I go to an event but I don't keep track of it because for me, it's unhelpful. It actually makes it less fun. It makes it less meaningful. So I think some tracking tools are super powerful and can be amazing for people. And sometimes not, but it's really, know thyself.
Love it. Love it. Stephen, this has been so awesome. I usually like to ask or end the conversations with asking, between much of what you're doing at Journey and sort of even what you're seeing and starting to evolve into the mental health space, what do you get most excited about as you think about the next 3 to 5 years of your own business or just the space in general and what's happening in the world?
I think it's incredible that the world is shifting to a place where people can have conversations about mental health. You see it when, Prince Harry or whatever his title is now, and Meghan Markle are talking to Oprah, they're talking about mental health. You see it at companies. Like we work with a lot of really conservative, old school law firms and investment banks, right? It's not just like cool West Coast startups, right? It's more traditional organizations. You're just seeing a lot of things. You're seeing psychedelics being used for mental health. There's a ton of studies coming out around that and have come out, right? And so like, what does that look like as that becomes legal and accessible for people in a clinical use to treat depression or PTSD or end of life care? And so there's just this groundswell of things happening around mental health that are just really promising. And when you think about it, like what we do is on the prevention side. So we're going to help you to stay mentally and emotionally fit. That's where we sit. But there's a whole host of other things that are super important. Like there might be a time when that might not work and you need therapy or you need medication or you need something else, right? And you look at some of the stats around mass shootings, around suicides, like it's horrible. Like it's terrible, right? And so what can we do, not just Journey, but all of us, to really help to prevent those things from happening and give people the support to know that they're cared for and give them the tools and give them the resources. So I'm just excited about the fact that these conversations are happening now in a much different way than they ever were. It's not just, hey, suck it up, power through it kind of thing. It's okay, you can have this conversation.
I love it. I think the part of that not concerns me in any way, but is just, it can be overwhelming as even like a consumer of sorts who's like looked or sought out therapy, is now there's so many options. And I think it comes down to many entrepreneurs and businesses in order to create the right user experience or journey to finding what you need at different points in your life stage. And I think it's pretty amazing that there's a huge shift in terms of companies doing this for their people. Like, even for me, I was having issues with my knee, and I went to an orthopedic doctor. They told me like I needed physical therapy. And then my company started to just offer yoga during lunch, similar to what you guys are doing with meditation. And sometimes the gateway is really all you need in order to then go ahead and just starting to be proactive about and curious about what else you could do next. And you never really know how the dots are going to connect. But that know thyself is also a great mantra, because I think a lot of it comes down to that. Stephen, you're awesome. Super excited about what you're building at Journey, and look forward to continuing sharing this conversation and also continuing it in real life whenever we're in the same city.
Hopefully soon. Well, I enjoyed this. Thanks for making time, and I will speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.